First off, there's two pieces in graduate school. The first main piece would be if you went on after your bachelor's degree here at Valpo to get your master's. It typically takes about 2 years to get your master's degree. Sometimes if you're doing research, it'll take a little bit longer. If you're just taking courses only, then you can get through typically in 2 years. They're mostly built around, assuming you pass your class as well. You can take it, there's two options. Thesis option, you have to write a big research paper. Well, it's not that big, but it's bigger research paper, and you do research, and then you have a committee that you defend your paper against and get out of school that way when you're finished. Non-thesis, you don't do the bigger paper, and you just take more coursework. And that was the option I took when I went through my master's degree. I honestly enjoyed the classes more than I thought I would get out of writing paper. The downside of the thesis is if you're having trouble with the research or with your advisor, getting things moving along, sometimes it can delay your exit and delay your graduation a little bit. The other piece of graduate school, both master's and PhD are considered in graduate school. So after your master's degree, you go on to your PhD. Some programs actually combine them together, that you come in and you get both a master's and a PhD upon graduation. Notre Dame is like that. You can usually have the choice of getting your master's after that 2 years and then working separately on your PhD. So each school is a little bit different in how they manage that. Typically, a PhD takes an additional 3 to 5 years on top of your master's degree. And sometimes a little shorter, but it's typically at least 3 years additional because you're doing more research to get your PhD. To get a PhD, you do have to do research. You do have to do a dissertation, which is the big paper, or actually a book that you write at the end of your PhD referencing your research. And so with PhD, you'll take classes, then you take a qualifying exam proving that you understood your classes well enough and that you can move into research. Then you do your research and work with your advisor, whoever that would be, and that's usually you usually pick somebody who's in an area that you're really interested in doing. So I picked a person who worked in transportation because that's what I really like through that. So you do your research and you write a book, essentially. My dissertation was 100 pages. Some of them are 170. It just depends on how much work you did in your dissertation. A lot of that, it's an appendix. Probably only wrote 40 real pages in there, and a lot of graphs and pictures and an appendix with lots of data in it. When you get all that done, then you finally have to defend your research and your dissertation in front of a committee. And it's made up of usually 4 to 5 other professors in your department, including your advisor, who's your major professor through there. When you pass that, if they think you did enough work to count as a PhD, then you're done and you graduate and move on to higher and better. Okay. To get into graduate school, what's some of the typical requirements that you would need to do that? First off, you need a decent GPA to get into graduate school at the bigger universities. Typically 3.0, you're probably safe as long as you have a 3.0. You can be a little under that. I think in different universities, each one has slightly different requirements. So if there's a place you really want to try to get into, just check out their website and see what their minimum GPA would be as a graduating senior from an undergraduate institution. And they'll look, if you had a really bad freshman year, I kind of did, they'll look more at your later years and see that, yeah, once you got into your subject area, for instance, mine was civil engineering. Once I got into my civil engineering classes, I did better when my GPA came up. So that was a stronger indicator that I could make it in grad school through that. Right? And like I say, they'll look mostly at that last 2 years. Then in the fall of your senior year, or 2 semesters before you graduate, basically, you'll take the GRE exam. And the GRE exam is a nationalized exam. It's a lot like the SAT, but for grad school. And so you'll apply for that. I don't think there's any real good way to study for it. I just took it cold. Just went into, I think, 4 or 5 hour exam. It's like one morning and a Saturday was when we took it. Nowadays, I think it's on computer test. You have to schedule an appointment at a computer testing. I think in Merrillville, there's a testing agency there that does them. So you'll take the GRE exam. You'll report your scores just like you did for the SAT to the different schools that you're interested in going to. So you pick 3 or 4 or 5 universities that you'd like to go to grad school at and have GRE send your scores directly to them. And later on, if you didn't get into where you wanted to, you could send for an extra fee, they'll send your scores on to other schools too. So then you fill out an application for the grad schools at the different universities that you're interested in. And that's typically, those are due at the end of December of the fall before you would start the following fall. So if you wanted to start graduate school in 2020, in the fall of 2020, at the end of 2019 is when your applications would be due, probably in December of 2019. And then you could be ready to go in August of 2020 at whatever grad school accepted you, if you wanted to get it there. You do typically need a recommendation from faculty, so stay on good terms with your professors, because you'll need someone to write recommendation letters for you when you go on to grad school. And that's not usually bad, especially if you've got a GPA of 3.0 or higher. You're probably on decent terms with your professors, and they'll say good things about your work if you want to go on to graduate school. Particularly if, like, you were wanting to study transportation, you'd want to stay on the good side of the transportation professor, because they do know who is in charge of which areas at different schools, and they'll take that into account as well. Why would you want to go to graduate school? There's a bunch of different reasons. If you really love the academic life and think that being on a university campus the rest of your life is what you really want to do, then like graduate school, getting a PhD and maybe becoming a professor might be for you. There's other jobs that can keep you in the academic world. You can get research scientist positions. You can get postdocs, a bunch of different things that you wouldn't necessarily be a professor, but you could continue doing research and doing academic things. And joke is the summers are off. Well, they're not. You work through the summers. But it seems like they're off. You have a little more freedom through there. The other reason to go to grad school, particularly if you like just want to get a master's, is that you like your area. So in my case, that's why I went and got my master's degree. I did not think I would ever end up with a PhD. I went back for a master's degree because getting my bachelor's, I thought, well, that's a good general education, but now I'm really interested in learning more about it and doing a better job at it. And I want to know more in depth about each subject area. So my focus area was in materials and transportation. So in grad school, you don't take any electives. You don't take English. You don't take psychology, none of that other stuff. All you take is classes in your core research area. And well, I took a stats class, but that was required as part of that research piece through that. But generally, you're focused on just your area. And that's I really enjoyed that. I thought, bachelor's degree, I wasn't sure I could really design anything coming out of the gate working for a company. But after the master's degree, yeah, I really felt like now, yeah, I've got enough tools now. I've had enough classes. I know how to start a project off and jump in and go. So that was why I went back for a master's degree through there. Plus, it does help out getting a job. It does make you more marketable. And you can see from the little diagram there in the right corner that you do get, there is a higher pay involved in that. And so that's good. Also, if you go for your professional engineering license, your PE license, going to grad school cuts some years off of how long you have to wait before you take the PE test. So I think master's degree cuts off 1 year, and I think PhD cuts off 2 years out of the required 4 years of experience before you take the PE. So for civils, that's a big deal, because to advance in the world as a civil, you'll need your PE license. Some of the other engineerings, a little less so. I think mechanicals and electricals, some get them. Civils, you kind of need that, so that's a plus through there. Then if you just really love being on college campuses, hey, there you go. You can stay and go to grad school, and you can stretch it out at least 2 more years before they kick you off and you go and get a real job through there. So if you're thinking about graduate school, here's some suggestions for it. First is pick out what universities that you're really interested in going to, and visit them and talk to people in that. Right now is a great time to visit grad schools, so this coming year, because the economy is good and there's not as many people applying for grad school, so the grad schools are kind of hungry right now, and they really need good students. Students are I guess the gears, and some people call it the slave labor, upon which big research universities operate. And you're the ones doing the research, so they need you. And so they're going to be very interested in getting you there. So visit the schools. They'll be really happy to talk to you and take you on tours, let you talk to the faculty that you might be interested in working under. So that's a good time to visit that, either this coming summer before your senior year or that fall of senior year, before the applications are due. Pick a program that is known for your area. So if you like transportation, like I did, pick a university that is known to have good transportation programs and has a good course offering and kind of a robust faculty in transportation. You probably don't want to pick a place that only has one transportation professor. As in a grad school, you'd want to have a number of professors and people who do research and stuff that you're interested in. If you like transit, you could pick somebody who's known in a place that has researchers who do transit and so forth. So that's part of it, looking at that. And then picking and trying to identify who your advisor might be, which is your major professor, the guy who's going to direct all the research you do there, and will give you a big jump after you graduate. Because if you work for the right guy and do well, that's people see that and say, oh, well, if you worked under him, you must really know what you're doing. He's doing cutting edge stuff in this field. So that's good to when you do those visits and do some research online, figure out who's known in that field. Ask your professors here at Valpo too; they can tell you who would be known in that field and who has a good program, and that can direct you towards the university. Don't worry about if the university as a whole isn't ranked really highly. Just worry about if your area is ranked well, if there is a ranking for it specifically, and even more so if the professors at the universities you're looking at are well known. You can ask professors here, for recommendations on places and who would be known. And they can also probably guide you away from certain professors who are harder to work for. So it's good to ask your current professors for real guidance there and where to focus on. So yeah, do that research. Look at those universities and see how you can get in there. And there are rankings, but take that with a grain of salt a little bit. You really, like even if you look at University of Illinois on there, it depends on whether you're interested in going into structures and as a civil engineer, or if you're interested in going to geotech as a civil engineer. They may not be equally strong in both. So even though they're ranked number 2 on here, then they may not be in the area you're interested in, highly ranked through there. And again, it is better to know, identify an advisor you'll think you'll be working with. Sometimes they'll tell you in advance that they'll accept you and that you will be working with this advisor. And that's a good thing to know before you get there, if you can. Other programs, Notre Dame, for instance, they typically put you into a pool your first year, and then you got selected by professors or worked with professors and finally, mutually agreed on who your advisor is there. So keep in mind that science and engineering, the universities, they want and or need you, and particularly more so these next couple of years probably with the economy improving. So there was a shortage in engineers right now, and you can see that in our students getting out, that there's a lot of competition for them. So it's a good time to be graduating, both either getting a job or going to a university for additional training. If you've got decent grades and decent GRE scores, basically if you get accepted to one of those universities you're applying to, research institution, it's almost guaranteed if you're in science and engineering, you're going to get to go for free. And I guess I would hold out for that, but you should be getting to go for free if you've got, say, decent scores to get in. Sometimes they'll charge a fee, but a couple $100 a semester for some unknown reason. But generally all your tuition is remitted, and so you don't have to pay any tuition, and they give you a living stipend. So you can pay for food and gas and your rent and so forth. And I don't know, it's probably higher now. It used to be, $1,200 or $1,300 a semester or a month, and it's enough to live on. You're not going to get rich on it, but at least you're not paying. So it's versus undergrad where you're paying. Now, when you finally get to grad school, they start to pay you. It may not be high, but it's a good start. So you won't incur any additional debt in grad school through there. They do expect you to do some work. You'll either be a teaching assistant, which means you'll be grading papers and covering some of the lab sections in courses, or you'll be a research assistant, which is, I think, a little nicer piece of it. So you're just going to be doing research typically for your major advisor when you get to grad school. You're there. That's graduate school in a nutshell, and say it's a good option, and it's not for everybody. I worked 5 years first, and then I went to grad school later. Once I was really sure I knew which area I was very interested in. There's a lot of options. If you take the GRE, you have 5 years basically to use it, or you have to retake it again. And if you apply to go to grad school, if you've taken any upper level courses that might count towards grad school, usually 500 level courses or something, those time out after 5 years as well. So the sweet spot is if you if you want to work first, try to figure out 4 years in if you think you're going to go on to get your master's. That'd be a good time to do it. That's all I got. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. Thanks.